Hello and welcome to Bud's RPG Review, where I give my thoughts on role-playing games, card games and board games. Today's review is 2013's Canis Mysterium, a scenario with bite for Call of Cthulhu 7th edition by Chaosium. Canis Mysterium is a 32-page scenario that is meant to be played over one or more sessions. It is described as being a suitable introduction to a new Call of Cthulhu campaign, where it can easily be worked into an already established campaign. There'll be spoilers from this point on, so stop here if you want to play this. Canis Mysterium is set in and near Arkham in the October of 1930. The first part is entitled The Werewolf of Cold Waterfalls. We're treated to the extensive backstory of one of the scenario's main protagonists, Tobias Lertz. Tobias was an orphan left on the doorstep of the Lertz family, who lived in a small farmhouse near the town of Cold Waterfalls, Massachusetts. Tobias was a large and unattractive child that attracted negative attention. The Lertzes unfortunately turned out to be a cruel adoptive family, and as such Tobias was worked hard on their farm and bullied by his cousins. He was frequently beaten and mistreated, which turned him into a sullen and resentful person. The Lertz family perished in a fire in 1911 that Tobias was the only survivor of at the age of 13. Tobias was taken in by Father Leclerc of Cold Waterfalls, who was a tough but fair guardian, although Tobias never changed his ways and remained disdainful. Tobias was discovered to be quite intelligent by Father Leclerc, being particularly adept at learning new languages. Tobias's teenage years were rife with trouble wherever he went, and in 1917 he went off to fight in the Great War, but was dishonourably charged for various military offences. Tobias spent 2 years in prison and returned to Cold Waterfalls in shame. The locals became more hostile than they already were towards Tobias, so Father Leclerc secured him work with a local carpenter to learn a trade. Tobias seemed to thrive at this, but couldn't seem to stay out of trouble. Father Leclerc offered him a job as the caretaker of his church's graveyard, living in a small shack and tending the graves and keeping it in a state of repair. Tobias quietly went about his work for 2 years, secretly brewing moonshine and raising wolf hybrid dogs in a cruel manner to keep them vicious. Tobias befriended a local sculptor, Harlan Dupree, who worked on carving gravestones. Harlan had turned to drink when his wife had died, and he and Tobias found solace in each other's hatred of the local judgmental community. The years passed until a day 7 months ago where Tobias was tending the graveyard after a storm and came upon a strange creature that had been trapped by an uprooted tree. The creature was naked, dog-faced and injured. The ghoul, as it was left for dead by its pack. Tobias felt a sense of sympathy for the creature and helped free it and tend it back to health. The ghoul's influence on Tobias was major. It taught Tobias ghoul speak, which stripped him of the last of his sanity. Between them they hatched a hateful plan to reunite the ghoul with its pack and grant Tobias revenge over the people who had wronged him. The plan was to animate the corpses in the graveyard and kill everyone in Cold Waterfalls. This involved carving a special symbol on the gravestones of the corpses that were to be animated. Harlan, who was oblivious to the presence of the ghoul, was asked by Tobias to carve the symbol into the gravestones and was paid in trinkets. Unfortunately, one of the trinkets that he was paid with was the wedding ring of his long-past wife that had been buried with her. This was too much for Harlan to bear, who turned to drink and tried to reconcile with his estranged daughter. She rebuffed his drunken approaches, and an enraged Harlan proceeded to march to Tobias' shack and confront him. Harlan threatened Tobias with the authorities. Tobias called the ghoul to his aid, which was too much for Harlan's fragile sanity to bear, and Harlan fell to all fours like a dog and bounded off into the woods. The next day a local shopkeeper found Harlan outside his store. This was not an unusual occurrence for him, but what was shocking was the fact that Harlan was growling like a dog and guarding a human shin bone, that of a local farmer's daughter that had gone missing the previous evening. This is the point at which the investigators enter proceedings. The presumption is made that one or more of the investigators have connections with Miskatonic University and are duly summoned by the university president, Dr. David Adelson. He is joined by Dr. Conrad Miller, the head of the School of Biology, and Dr. Jeremy Manson, professor of abnormal psychology. The investigators are informed that they have been contacted by Constable Clark of Cold Waterfalls about a local man they have in custody that was exhibiting some peculiar behaviour. They are advised that due to a crippling psychotic breakdown, this man believes himself to be a wolf, and that what makes things worse, it would appear that he has murdered and eaten a local girl. The investigators are asked to go to Cold Waterfalls on behalf of the university to investigate what's happened. Presuming the investigators agree, they head off to Cold Waterfalls and meet up with Constable Clark and his deputy, Amos Pitts. Glad to see the investigators, they proceed to show them Harlan Dupree, who has had a full breakdown, is walking on all fours, sleeps on the floor, and whimpers, growls and snaps like a dog. The investigators can then proceed to quiz the local law enforcement to get some hints as to why Harlan has ended up the way he has. They have a number of lines of questioning. The shopkeeper who found him, Phil Kretz, the parents of the missing girl, and Harlan's daughter, Clementine Dupree. The The investigators can pick up lots of rumours at the local diner, but get the most information when speaking to Clementine. Eventually, the investigators should end up investigating Harlan's workshop, which will provide them some clues as to what is happening. The investigators, upon returning to the town, come across a lynch mob intent on making Harlan pay for what he has done, which can be diffused by the right combination of skills and luck. The Miller farmstead, where the missing girl Hannah Miller lived, is a port of call that can provide some useful clues, as well as St Agnes' Church, the home of Father Leclerc. When all the clues have been pieced together, the scenario culminates in a confrontation at the cemetery, where the investigators will have to deal not only with Tobias, but his wild dogs and the ghoul itself. The aftermath of proceedings has Harlan being committed to Arkham Asylum, and we are presented with some mythos lore and a new spell, Temporal Rip. We are also provided some adventure hooks to follow this scenario. In conclusion, there's a lot to like about this mini excursion into Arkham territory. The art throughout the book is oddly satisfying, and I thought the sad tale of Tobias Laird to be an engaging one. The scenario has a pleasing mythos-light feel about it, with the supernatural element only being revealed at the conclusion, and I feel a Canis Mysterium would make an excellent introduction to the universe of H.P. Lovecraft and Call of Cthulhu. Sure, I had a few niggles, like the lack of pre-generated characters, a map of cold waterfalls, and a conversion guide for other editions of Call of Cthulhu. Also, the excellent backstory is something that players will in all likelihood never find out, which is a shame, but these things didn't detract me from what was decent here. I give Canis Mysterium a good 8.5 out of 10. If you enjoyed this review, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also, don't forget to check out my other reviews. Bud out.